Great that you're here. I want to talk today about how data is the driver for innovation. Everyone is talking about innovation, everyone is talking about data. I believe that those two are really intertwined and should work together to get the optimal results. So let's get to it. First, I want to talk about two examples where data is very important for innovation. First one is the Voyager mission from NASA. I'm not sure if people are familiar with Voyager. The Voyager mission from NASA was launched late 70s, and it was launched two satellites to discover outer space, literally. So they were sent on a trajectory to the outer rings, so to Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, to collect image data, but also to understand how these planets look like. But there was a problem. The further away it got, the harder it was to download all the data which was in this satellite. You have to imagine like a satellite. We, for example, have a ground station. Satellites goes to collect data, and there is 1 minute in time or 50 minutes of window where you can see the satellite. And you have to download all the information which is in there. And the further away the satellite got, the harder it became. So the first innovation in data compression basically happened there. Nowadays we have servers and applications which are updated with new software. Back then they had to update the satellite while it's already flying. They built some data compression module, and for example the zip format people know today is derived from that same algorithm. So the huge amount of data drove the innovation in data compression. Next one is quite recent, so I'm not sure, I think many people saw this. This is a picture of a black hole with some red around it. Deceivingly simple, although if you look at her, these are her hard drives, but it's only 1/8 of the data she used. She used this times 8, and I think she collected around 5 million gigabytes of data, which then led to this image. Amazing, right? So how much data you need to just create this, but it was a huge advancement, and it really helped in further scientific research about black holes and what not. A little bit about myself. I'm Dirk. I'm from OnRecruit. I'm the CEO and CTO, so I'm responsible for the people operation basically in the technology. And I'm going to talk about how you need data to innovate and how to innovate. What's the key ingredient to success? So, how is data the driver for innovation? I think that's twofold. So the first one is data helps to determine what to innovate, right? So you can start with innovation anywhere, but it's really important to understand where should we begin. And the second, if you start innovating to keep track of whether that innovation makes sense. Is it reaching the desired state? Are we getting where we want to be? And if not, why not? Right? So these are the two main ingredients in that. If we dive one level deeper, and we pick the first part, so how to determine what to innovate, it's really important to have the right data. And the second is, of course, to understand what needs innovation. So you have the information, you have maybe everything combined, and then understanding, so, okay, what can we derive from the information we got? This is a typical recruitment tech landscape, which we see. Now things are grouped, but there are lots of different systems most of the recruitment teams are using. You have your ATS, you have your website, you have maybe your email marketing campaigns, you have your marketing campaigns. And what's really hard is to understand how all these systems affect each other, right? So if you have a visitor on a website, we don't know which candidate it is. If you have a candidate in your ATS, in some cases even hard to understand, so which employee is it, or which billable candidate is that for a contracting agency. So referring to a specific candidate, job or hire across all these different systems is really hard. So to build the right data set, it's important to make sure that you can unify all those different streams of information, so you can reference a candidate across all these systems. So if you're talking about candidate A, we can maybe target them through Facebook, we can reach to them LinkedIn, we know this is the same candidate in your ATS, whatsoever. So really unifying all that information. But also, all these different information are there for a reason, all those sources, because every source of information has its own information around a particular candidate, around a particular job. And nowadays, if people want to do reports, you log into Facebook and you see what is the campaign doing. You log into LinkedIn, you see what is the campaign doing. You go to ATS, which candidate came in. You go maybe to your back office, how many candidates were actually now being hired. Right, so you have to log into very different systems to understand what's going on. The most important thing is that if you combine everything, you can enrich all those pieces of information. You can have one point of entry to understand what's totally going on across the whole line. So this is one of the most important parts in innovation, and you see that the same with NASA, you see the same with black hole. Having all this information together, especially that example from the black hole, for example, that was, I think, 8 to 10 ground stations of data which then were combined by the woman we saw, who's, I think, 4 or 5 years younger than I am, but really already had this amazing result. Combine that and being able to produce this one piece of innovation. Now we have the information, that's nice, we check that box. What's next? One of the hardest things is to then understand what are we going to do with this information. So sometimes we see that people like to build pie charts, bar charts, just for the fancy of them, right? So we will often see reports with just showing things, but it's actually not often really what people want to see. It's just nice that you know it, but if you then think, okay, so what? That's a really hard question, and it doesn't often, those reports often don't solve the question. So what is important is to actually build those reports with the end in mind. So think, for example, like I want to show that I have a new website, that this new website is doing better than my old website. So maybe some things to report upon are amount of visitors, conversion rates, see how effective your website is, maybe whether candidates are coming back more often to your website. By then creating these reports that basically support that thought. So that's why I say first you find what the desired outcome is, then think of how to report these outcomes. So report with the outcome in mind. And of course it's hard to be right at once, but that's always the iterative process of innovation. So in short, building the right data sets and generating the right and relevant insights. So we have those insights, we have those reports, we have the data set unified. What's next? Then it's understanding what needs innovations. And there are 3 basic steps in that. So you have your information, and then it's about reviewing key findings. So what have we found out so far? Do we see some interesting bits and pieces in information which we can zoom into? Can we do something with, or whatsoever? The second, and that's actually one of the most important, is to ask people who are interacting with that piece of information in the business, does this make sense to you? Do you see that as well? Right, so often people immediately go from, I've seen this and I'll start doing some, let's say, innovations or some experiments on that. But it's really important to also have the conversation internally with those key findings, with the affected people, like, do you see the same? And if not, why not? Right? Really sanity check everything you have found out to understand, am I on the right track? Data is only a means to a conversation. At the end, innovation is just being done by interacting with the people within your company. So you interview the people, you talk with people, you have conversations, you understand, okay, these are the things which make sense, which the business also sees that is happening. Let's pick the low-hanging fruit. So you have to start somewhere, right? So there are always easy wins to start innovating upon. Some questions you can ask yourself or your colleagues to help with sanity checking is, does this outcome make any sense? Is it what I expected? Right, so what I said earlier with reports as well, so think with the end in mind. So is this what I thought would happen? And if not, why is that not the case? And then the third one, do I have a simple explanation of why the outcome is different than expected? And I underline simple because if you need a lot of buzzwords to explain anything, I'm not sure if you're really on the right track. You have to dig deeper. You should make it as simple as possible and as understandable as possible, because only then you can create like you can get colleagues along. It's easier to get buy-in from the people around you, and it's more tangible basically what's going on. Okay, so we have the data set, we understand how to generate these reports and what are the things you have to keep in mind for that. Now the next thing is how then to build a culture of innovation. And again, in these things there are 4 main steps we need to take, and I'll at the end wrap this all up in one summary. So we know we have data sets, we have unified it, so we can reference candidates or whatsoever through different systems. We have enriched it, so every information lives in all places. We know where we want to innovate on. It's a simple problem. Now it's understanding, so where are we, where do we want to go, and how can we measure whether we are on the right path. So define measures to track progress. Okay, when we start to experiment, let's do it, right? And I'll come in with some caveats later. Then keep on monitoring and reviewing the outcomes, not only by looking at the dashboard, but also talking with the affected persons again. Does this make sense to you? Do you see any change? Do you feel any change? And then last but not least, rinse and repeat. So you will never innovate right at once. It's always an iterative process, right? So let's zoom in at the first one. Define the measures to track process. So it's important to understand where are we at right now? Where do we think we can go to? Where should we go to? So what's the desired state? What are the things we can keep track of or monitor to see whether we're on the right path? Right? So understand what you can keep track of in terms of KPIs that shows you to what extent you're moving to your desired state. And then last but not least, because you have the information, know how to measure these and keep track of them. The next, run the experiments. Experiments take time and a lot of information. So what we sometimes see is that if someone does an experiment, so let's say they want to build a strong employer brand and they start advertising on Facebook, that is something which you cannot see paying off within 2 weeks. So you have to be comfortable in waiting and gathering enough information to really understand, does this affect my business? Right? So you always have to spend resources upfront, can be time, can be money, in most cases it's both, to really learn whether you are on the right track. Then again, keep it stupid simple, kids, or keep it simple stupid. These, again, really important. If it's not easily, you cannot say it easily, it's really hard to get buy-in from others, and it's also hard to keep track of progress. And again, do not prematurely optimize, don't over-engineer, so be pragmatic and just run it, and just don't be defensive. Learning will take time, will cost resources, so be comfortable in waiting and seeing what's going on and changing along the way, and not at the beginning change things because you see things happening. Review outcomes, so to what extent are you reaching your desired state? Again, these are tracked to your KPIs. Does your desired state even make sense, right? Or should you change? It could be that along the way you'll find out, say, hey, what I tried to achieve doesn't make sense at all. But that's a good thing, because then you can go back to a drawing board, get the right stakeholders together, and then draw up a new experiment you want to run. And then, are you getting enough information, or is more data needed? So let's say in terms of recruitment, you're doing a recruitment advertising campaign in July, and you see that the results suck. It's summer holiday, so you can expect that some things might not turn out as you want it to be. So you have to understand, so okay, then we know September is a peak because people are get back from holidays. Let's run out the experiment until September, October, and then see whether it makes sense. And then again, with all this information, it's the iterative process. Test, rinse, repeat. So from the perspective and what we as OnRecruit also evangelize towards our customers, there are 3 main ingredients in driving innovation within the recruitment industry, and which actually not even recruitment industry, but just in general. You need the right people, right? Some of them should be digital natives, some of them should be data driven to really get into the data, understand what's going on, unify all those data sets, and start building dashboards and reports on top of that. They should be keen on experimenting and testing, so people should be willing to try new things, don't be afraid for change, and really be pragmatic in that sense. They should understand that both the business and the data. So what you sometimes see is people are really focused on the business or really focused on data, but really having the bridge who can make the connection between what's going on in the business and what the data is telling is really important and mostly underrated. You need the right platforms. So in terms, if you make a new buying decision for your ATS, for your vendors, third-party agencies, whatsoever, you should always ask, is it possible to export my information or to share the information you have within your system? And if so, how easy is it? You see that most of the platforms which currently live in the recruitment industry, but also other industries, are becoming marketplaces more often. Why is that? Because by adding more partners to the ecosystem, you can build a stronger product, because you can share the information, you can leverage specialism from others. So this should be on really every request for proposal or request for whatsoever, because if you cannot get the information out of a system, it's to no value. You should work towards one unified information set. And then the processes, right? So you can have great people, you can have great platforms, but if no one is interacting with the both, nothing will happen. Right? So you need to have people who are designing the processes, testing things out, and making sure that the right people use the right platforms and the right things are being done through them. So the 10 steps to success is hire or assign the right people, identify all relevant data sources and/or platforms, build the right data set for combining these data sources, generate the right reports and insights, sanity check these insights with the business, identify low-hanging fruits, start innovation through experiments, define KPIs, run experiments, learn, adapt, and repeat. And then maybe you're Rocky Balboa again in video. I'm not sure if you can see it, but then you become the real champion who is innovating in the recruitment space, understand what's going on, can help the business forward, and really thrive your recruitment business. What I also want to add is, in recruitment, this is now a movement which is happening, right? I'm now with OnRecruit for 4 years. At the beginning, most of the systems were fragmented, but you see that more and more digital marketeers, BI people, data analysts are coming into the recruitment space. So this is being a process that people go through more often and often. So it's important to really adopt this in the culture, and also in expanding your team, think of people who are willing to execute this. The companies who are doing this well are actually the companies that are quite successful, and what we see is that if you really have select the right people, platform, processes, you can make an awesome business. And that also helps attracting new candidates for yourself, because you have this environment where you have all the tools, you have all the shared information, you have this culture of collaboration and teamwork, and it really helps bringing your business forward. So with that, I conclude my presentation, and if there's any questions, I think we have 5 to 10 minutes left. Feel free to ask them.
Yes, I was curious, you have probably a lot of experiences. What is the most surprising data you have found in the company? Nobody was aware of this, and was it used by the strategic?
Yeah. So one of the most surprising things I found out recently was we worked with a let's say freelance agency. So they mediate in freelancers basically for all types of roles. So the throughput is quite high. Position is opened really quickly. A person needs to be staffed basically. This company is in the IT space, so there were mainly developers who were doing freelance SAP or interim projects. they haven't really thought about employer branding, how to build up the brand or whatsoever. But when working with them, one of the biggest sources for them to get their candidates are RSS feeds. I'm not sure if people are familiar with them, so there are news feeds which you can pull into your newsreader or whatsoever, and it will automatically pick up all new jobs which came from this website. Because they were dealing with freelancers and with ITers, people were able to extract it from the website, although they didn't actively, let's say, advertise with that. But it was one of the biggest sources for hires. So now they are re-adopting their website to subscribe to their RSS feed to get all those new notifications to really drive the business and be quicker than the competition hiring the right candidates. So these are some simple things, and that's what I mean with low-hanging fruit. It's just adding a button to the website like subscribe to our RSS feed, and you see even the amount of applications from their own sources double in no time.
Could you say that the RSS feed was like a job alert?
Yeah. Yeah. You could say that, yeah.
Do you have situations since the new GDPR is being applied that the data is much more restricted?
It's an opportunity for data holders or companies to build their own data set. So before GDPR, it was actually quite easy to buy data source from different parties, right? Third parties. Since GDPR, it's far more important to build your own data set. Because if you have a great data set and your competition doesn't, you have the competitive advantage. So if I talk from OnRecruit, so in that sense we anonymize all the information we have. And if we see what customers are doing, they are pulling more and more resource and data sets from different platforms into one big database basically. And some of them have dedicated persons who are trying to stitch everything together and really create this competitive advantage compared to the rest. So I see the GDPR as an advantage because they are forcing companies to be proficient at this, and people and companies that are doing this well are the companies that are thriving basically.
Google for Jobs.
Yeah.
They are going to force the whole market to more standardization.
Yeah.
How do you think about that?
You mean the standardization or the
as in ONET classifications that they are going to use and certain data fields that everybody should use in their publications. So that's a very nice way to align all data.
Exactly.
Do you have an opinion about what the potential impact of Google for Jobs can be? Is the high? Will it impact? Should we think about that at this point if we want to do something with data? Just your expert opinion about it.
So there are, I'll break them down in two questions. So unification, great, because that's the biggest struggle of data scientists is unifying. Like people that I think, I saw some juniors, I coached one young professional from a customer of ours in the BI team, and they didn't know that 90% of the job would be stitching information together. So like data analysts build fancy reports, 90% of the job is just, well, the heck can I get this information? How can I sanitize this? So unification, great. Google for Jobs. If you look at it from a candidate perspective, people already are able to find jobs through LinkedIn, through Indeed, all the job search engines. Google for Jobs will be in extra channels, but I think for the job seeker will not matter that much because they are still. You see that the direct traffic to LinkedIn and the bigger other platforms like Indeed, etc., is quite high.
But we have only one employer branding strategy. How can we position ourselves in a way that still we reach out the correct audience?
Got it. So let's say you want to advertise in, let's make it easy, Eastern Europe as well, right? So you have the Netherlands, like Central Europe or mainland Europe and Western Europe. What we always say is just start with one campaign with everything in, and then keep monitoring on what is going on. If you then see that most of the traffic comes, for example, from Eastern Europe, then it's time to cut them loose and make a separate Eastern Europe campaign and a mainland Europe campaign, basically. So that's what I meant earlier. Don't over-engineer too quickly. Just start very simple and then trickle down on whatever you see is going on. Because there is no one repeatable ingredient to be successful in online recruitment. It's just trying, testing, monitoring, and then basically crystallizing and making it more granular along the way. And that's also a misperception. So like, I understand that if there's a hiring need, you need results now, but most of the things just take, then you're basically already too late. So you need to really think, so what's my hiring forecast going to look like next year? Oh, I see there's a peak, so let's start 9 months in advance to already understand the market. Cool. Any more questions? Can be both personal as well as about content. Right? So maybe I have a question for you. So what is currently your biggest struggle within recruitment? I'm not sure if someone wants to answer.
For me, for example, is that my organization is keen on investing in a lot of tools, but then they are not fully utilized.
Yeah.
In a sense that you have ATS, which you implement, and then basically you use it to collect applications, which to me is not an ATS, it's just a collection of applications.
Excel plus.
Yeah. So Outlook plus. So that's one of the challenges to see the opportunities in the tools where you have, and the data analysis and data collection is another one, and defining what you want to track and how you want to track it.
Yeah. So and that's the hard part about this pivots, right? So last year we see this as well. So many companies started many projects, but if you look at beginning of 2019, first thing almost all of our customers said, like, we need to kill projects because we have started too much, haven't finished anything. Again, this is, I understand, defensive behavior because you want to be in this hype, but that is just being patient, nailing one thing, then moving on to another. Don't test too much at once. Test one thing, nail it, then expand. Great. I think we are then done. Thank you very much. It's great to not be in the company, but more